Ba-ding. Okay, so how is everybody? How's everybody been since the last time I saw y'all? Good? Feeling slightly overwhelmed yet? Everybody feeling good? By the way, who all applied for SkyWest? Anybody get in there? Oh, heck yeah. Anybody else? I'm a recruiting. This is good to see. So I think our next class is going to be a pretty decent size. So United is hiring everybody. So it's all good. A lot of flux in the market right now. So it's kind of interesting that way. So great. Well, what we're going to do is any aviation news or anything that anybody's been watching last few days? Nothing big? Anybody see that we have a winter storm watch this week for a big chunk of the country. We also had massive thunderstorms in the south in Florida last night. So we can't decide in February if it's winter or if it's summer or if we're going to skip spring. So yeah, makes it a lot of fun for dispatching, things like that. So yeah, I haven't heard of anything big and crazy going on in the market. Like I say, I know there's a lot of shuffle with dispatchers and things like that going to different companies and things like that. So it's kind of cool. Industry, there's always a need in this space, which is cool. So, okay, so if there's no major questions, I would feel generally good about jumping into our quiz. Anybody else have any questions or current concerns or want to brain vomit that information onto the quiz as soon as possible? That's usually how I am. Just give it to me fast. Rip off the Band-Aid. So go ahead. We can, let's see, it should be in the drive. We're in our classroom, sorry. Pull it up and see if it dropped in. Okay, I think it's still just coming in. Just refreshing here. Anybody have any questions? Let's see. Oh, that's me. I gotta get in to see who's got their hands up. Still me. Noah.
Yeah, I'm having some technical difficulties. My laptop decided not to work today. So I'm on my phone right now, but I'm trying to switch to my iPad, but it's making you let me in. And I'm going to
Okay.
turn it off my phone once I'm on my iPad.
Here, okay. Did that let
Thank
you in?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. And it looks like that quiz just dropped. Does everybody see it there? Okay, so go ahead. I think we've been doing 45 minutes, correct? Yep, so come back at, I can't do math, 20 after. Wherever you are, 20 after. That seemed hard, but here we go. So just shoot me a message in there if you need anything. If not, we'll see you in a little bit. Okay. Got 5 more to hit go. We get everybody to hit submit on that, so it's all in there. Looks like most of them are, just missing a few. Four more. Peter, Betty, Juan, and Alexander. You can pop those in. We'll go ahead and go over them. Everybody go with that? Look at the answers, see where we did. I'll get those last few. Okay, just 3. Can you last 3 pop yours in, Peter, Juan, Alexander? Hit go. Okay. Very good. So I'm going to start at the top here. So what does ILS stand for? Anybody want? Anyone?
Instrument landing system.
Perfect. Okay, what are the 2 main components that make up the ILS? Do I have any?
Glide slope and localizer.
Side slope and localizer. Good job. Okay, what type of guidance does a precision approach provide to a pilot? Arian.
Lateral and vertical.
Okay, both vertical and lateral. Good job. What kind of guidance does a non-precision approach provide? Christopher.
Just the lateral.
Just the lateral. Okay, what approach types provide both lateral and vertical? Mohammed.
Precision approach.
Pardon, say again?
A precision approach. You said both vertical and lateral, right?
What are the type? There was like ILS, localizer, VOR, NDB, LNAV, VNAV, and LPV. Which ones are precision? All right, provide, not necessarily provision, but provide both lateral and vertical guidance.
LNAV. Let me pull it up.
Your choices. Anybody else want to help? Your choices are ILS, yes or no, lateral and vertical. I got some thumbs up, so yes. Okay, so our ILS. What about the localizer? Okay, no. What about a VOR? Does it give both lateral and vertical? VOR. No guesses? No, no on the VOR. Okay, NDB, non-directional beacon. No, 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 no. LNAV, VNAV. Okay, yes, lateral and vertical, it's in there. LPV. Okay, yes. LPV on the yes for both lateral and vertical. We don't spend as much time on those satellite type navigations in this class other than what they are. When you get to wherever it is you're going to work, you will spend a lot more time on that because more and more navigation is moving towards satellite. So, okay. So we're going to go through another list. Which of these provide only lateral guidance? So ILS, thumbs up or down? I'll throw my thumb this way. ILS, lateral only, yes or no? No, it's both. Localizer. Yeah, okay, I'm seeing some head nods. VOR, lateral only. NDB. Yep. LNAV, VNAV. Nope. Okay. And LPV. Complete opposite of what we just went through. Perfect. Okay. What is the purpose of SIDS and STARS? Anybody want to raise your hand? Brian.
Sequence traffic in and out of the terminal environment and relieve workload.
Yep. Okay. Gonna minimize that workload. It's gonna get us all on the on and off ramps and get us all organized to land or take off. Okay. So looking at the difference between ground-based or satellite nav aids. So which of these are ground-based? VOR. Let's see the thumbs up and down. Ground-based. Okay, so VOR, yes. Localizer. Localizer, ground-based or satellite? Localizer is ground-based. So that's it. Somebody have a question? Nope, it just was like a little ding. Okay, DME. Ground-based? Yes or no? Yeah. Okay, RNAV. Is that ground-based? No. GPS. Is GPS ground-based? Nope. Just like my car. RNP. Is that ground-based? Nope. Okay, good job. Okay, what does STAR stand for? If somebody wants to raise their hand. Sam.
Standard terminal arrival.
Yep, standard terminal arrival route. Good job. Another hand up for Sid. Brett.
SID stands for standard instrument departure.
Yep, perfect. Okay. Now, do people have the quizzes up? Is it okay to ask these chart questions? Or when you submitted it, did it go away forever? Brett.
Oh, sorry. I just forgot to put my hand down.
Okay. Okay, cool. Are you guys
I think, yeah, the only thing is the questions are not in the same order as I think is what you're saying. So we're having to kind of
that
scroll
makes
through.
it tricky. Okay, so should we skip these chart ones? Did anybody have any questions? You want to scroll through and see if you have any questions on the GLD VORTAC and the HLC VORTAC, the total distance between them? If you want to scroll through and find that, might be easier to make sure. These are the ones where get a little wonky for people. Distance between GLD, Goodland, and Hill City, HLC. Did everybody find that chart on the quiz? And what was your guess?
69.
69. Okay, is that what everybody got? 30 plus 39. Okay, the next one is what radial off of the HLC VORTAC would you take to get on to CUGGA? So what radial off the HLC VORTAC would you take to get off? Brett.
The 084 radial.
084. Anybody else get anything different? Alan,
269.
269. Yeah, they're going the same direction, right?
I
So the
looked at
question
the
is
VOR.
what direction you're going. So remember those radials, that's kind of determining the direction that you're going because it's on that compass. Okay. So that one in the right direction or in the right area, just the wrong direction. So, okay. What are the legacy VOR service volumes for terminal? Who knows terminal? Let's see some hands. Terminal VOR service volumes. Arian,
25.
25. What about the low?
70.
For low.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me look at my.
Yeah. Terminal low and high.
Sorry, 40. Yes, that's what I did. 40.
40 for low and high.
High is 130.
Okay.
130.
130. No, it's 70, isn't it?
No, for the legacy.
Oh, for legacy. Legacy. I'm looking at the.
Yeah, I got myself also confused with that one. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, what is the new service volumes for VOR low and VOR high? Trevor.
70 and 130.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Those are kind of weird down, sir, aren't they? Okay. What does RVSM stand for? RVSM. No takers? Arian.
Reduce vertical separation minimum.
Okay, very good. Okay, and what aircraft equipment do you need to fly into RVSM? Caitlin.
2 altimeters, the autopilot, 2-way radio, and then a mode C transponder.
Correct. Good job. Okay. That's actually a common misnomer is TCAS. TCAS is one that everybody wants to put into RVSM. Probably a very common question that pilots get as well, or send to dispatchers. So, okay, what flight levels are considered RVSM airspace? Caitlin.
Flight level 290 to 410.
Okay, good job. Okay, the one nav aid. I feel like we did a lot on one nav aid the last time I was here. What is the one nav aid rule? Anyone? Can anyone describe the one nav aid rule to me? What do I use the one nav aid rules to do? Trevor.
You need one navigational aid. It's for alternate minimums, but
Okay.
you need one navigational aid on a straight-in approach and need to add 400 feet and 1 static mile to minimums.
Okay, perfect. What about the 2 nav aid? Anyone else? Brian.
Two navigational facilities on 2 separate and suitable runways. You take for those two, you take the high, well, you add 200 feet to your ceiling and a half mile to your visibility, and you take the higher of each of those for your HUDs.
Good job. Good job. So that's our 2 nav aid. And what makes something suitable if I'm using the 2 nav aid?
Your wind is one thing.
Wind.
Right, like
That's what's
tail-
making it suitable, right? You've
Okay.
got to be able to actually use it, not just use it to lower your minimums. You've got to be able to functionally use both runways that you're choosing. If I couldn't use it with closed runways, I got to make sure the winds align. I don't have, more than the 10 knot tailwinds, things like that. Okay, what are some things that affect aircraft performance? So give me some thumbs up and down. Hey, wait. Yes or no? Yeah. Okay. Too heavy, too light. I was actually jump seating a few weeks ago, and it was the first time that the first officer had landed an empty plane on a repo. I was actually on the repo. The weight, it changed very much his landing performance, not only just from what I would consider as a dispatcher, but it was his technique as well. We landed a little hard on that one because he wasn't quite used to the weight of it. So kind of interesting how weight does affect both us as well as the pilots and their procedures and techniques. So temperature, yes or no? Yes. Okay, runway length. Yes. Wind. Yes. That which aircraft systems are operating or not operating, as the case may be. Yes. Airport elevation. Yeah, perfect. Anybody else think of any other things that maybe wouldn't have been on here?
Runway slope.
Okay, slope. Whether or not it's grooved or not might affect how I slow down on the next one. I would say is contaminated runways, wet or contaminated runways. We're not going to get as good a performance on those. So all of these different things go into what affects stuff. So, why do I want to know that? Because it'll help me on, what things can I mitigate? What things can I change? What things can I alter to get better performance? Things like that. Okay. So the next one. So this is the orange chart for those of you that are looking. So using the JEP chart, select all of the authorized transition points for the star. So does anybody want to give me what you came up with for the transition points? I'll look at this right here. Okay, anybody have what did everybody come up with if you found this?
Gallup, Zuni, and Winslow.
Yeah, good job. Gallup, Zuni, and Winslow are your transition points to get onto this arrival, onto this star. Okay, the next one is what are the authorized transition points for this SID? And this is for the Hoover 8 departure out of Las Vegas. Not gonna lie, I like some of the Vegas names of things. Arian.
I got MLF.
Okay.
DRK. BAVPE and
Okay.
DVC.
Perfect. Everybody else see anything different? Because that was a pretty good job right there. Got them all. Okay. Perfecto. Okay. There were some alternate minimums there for the CRJ 700 using those 2 approaches and things that are missing. We got 26 right, 1 left. We've got some equipment outages and some lightage. Ooh, we're making it tricky on this one. What did y'all come up with? Brian,
800 feet and 2 statute miles.
good job. Makes it tricky, and that's, again, a really good example of why it's important to look at the NOTAMs as well, because, you know, you may be legal or not legal depending on some equipment outage. So, okay, what are your alternate minimums based on the following approach with a high minimums captain? What did y'all come up with?
The wrong answer.
The wrong answer. Anybody up come up with the right answer? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Okay, so it's not showing us that anything is out, right? Now remember, the high minimums captain, and this is where probably a lot of people got missed or messed up, is we change and we add to the landing minimums, not the alternate minimums. So it's 700, 1 3/4, because we don't show that anything's out of service. So take 300 plus 400, 3/4 plus 1, so that's 1 3/4. So I think a lot of people try to add those high minimums on top of that, but the high minimums are what his landing minimums are, not his alternate minimums, because alternate minimums already build in a little bit of wiggle room for that. That makes sense? Arian?
Was that a alternate minimum was for the 100, right?
So no, if you're going to add for the alternate minimums, you're going to add the 401. You are only given one approach here.
But wasn't the high minimum captain you add 100 or half statute
To
mile?
his landing minimums, not his alternate minimums.
Okay.
And that's what I think most people that got it wrong
Well,
probably
I
did.
got it wrong
Added
because I
the
thought
alternate
that,
minimums
yeah.
plus
Yeah.
the alternate, but not, you just do it to the landing minimums. Okay. Because remember, the alternate minimums already built that in, but let's say he goes to that's alternate, he actually has to divert to that. He is going to have to land at the high minimums, captain minimums. So, okay. Using a CRJ 700, what would be my landing minimums for a standard ILS approach if the ALS was NOTAMed unusable? ALS is out. Anyone take a guess? Trevor.
That one was 200 3/4.
Yep, correct. The ALS is out, 2 3/4. Okay, what would be the minimums for a COJ 700 if the glide slope was out? Alan?
400 3/4.
400 3/4. Yeah, just the glide slope this time. So, okay. Using a CRJ 700, what would my landing minimums be for a standard ILS approach if the localizer was NOTAMed unusable? Rebecca.
Unable to use this approach.
Yeah, no localizer, no approach on an ILS. So you can use it with the glide slope out, but not without the localizer. Okay. Using a CRJ 700, what would my landing minimums be for a standard ILS approach? And this is for 3-5 right. Nothing's out, everything's working. Anyone? Also happens to be our lowest possible standard minimums. Tatum,
A 200.5.
200.5. Yeah. Okay, what is the definition of a tempo? Anyone? I'll start playing roulette. Trevor,
Weather lasting less than half of the temporary time period and for no more than 1 hour at a time.
very good. Okay. So on the Will Rogers VOR, what does the H stand for? Anyone? What does your H stand for? Nichelle.
VOR service volume type.
Okay, perfect. Okay, what does the D represent in the Will Rogers VOR box there? Nichelle.
DME equipped.
Yeah, good job. Okay, little legal to go questions. This is the question was 12th day, 12Z. We love our 12s, I guess. Using the land minimums below, are you legal to go? And is a destination alternate required? Brian.
Yes, legal to go, and yes, alternate is required.
Perfect. I was just kind of reading the weather. Yep. Legal to go, alternate required. Alternate required because of that absolutely disgusting line in there. So, okay. What are the primary flight controls? Caitlin.
Aileron, rudder, and elevator.
Okay, perfect. Okay, name 4 factors for computing fuel according to the FARS. Nichelle.
Wind and other weather, anticipated traffic delays, one instrument approach, and possible missed approach, and any other conditions that may delay landing of the aircraft.
Okay, good job. Okay, Grand Forks. Which of the following statements are true about the Grand Forks? Two of the following statements are true. Selecting all that apply. Okay, Arian.
DME for the approach is provided by the localizer.
Yeah. Okay, very good. All the things. Okay, perfect. Okay. Very good. Do. Woohoo. Okay, now again, we're gonna like get yourself situated to get all organized for taking a test Monday. So, pro tip, study all these quizzes, study all the study guides. The more you come on Monday ready with that information, not trying to relearn it when you're there, the better off you're going to be. It'll make your 2 weeks so much more enjoyable that you'll be skipping to town because you didn't have to do that. It's kind of like once you got the ADX done, okay, same thing. Have this stuff locked down and then you will not be frustrated during class. Okay, we're kind of at a good breaking point. Do you guys need like a snacky snack break or just because we kind of just blasted through that? Should we do like 20 minutes? Does that give everybody enough time? Okay, so come back at like 10 after. Then we will pick on up. Okay, we got everybody back. Onitsar, I had some hot tea, and so now I got a better voice. Sorry, my voice comes and goes the more tired I get. So, and the more I think I'm a little under the weather too. So we'll get it all back together by next week. So, okay. So tonight and tomorrow night are kind of some of the softer things. So take a deep breath. This is kind of conceptual, less to memorize. Wahoo, right? Okay, then we'll do, so what we're going to do is we're going to go some of this like human factors, some practical dispatching type scenarios, things like that. And then we'll do a pretty good review just to kind of see how you are. We just reviewed a bunch of stuff just now for your quiz. Kind of go through some things that way. Then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're going to introduce you into flight planning. Now, don't worry. Everybody is going to come the first night of class when we get back into flight planning again in person and realize I don't have any clue, which is okay. That is what is to be expected. What we'll be doing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is going to be planting little seeds so that next Monday, Tuesday, when we're doing it together in class, that you'll kind of say, oh yeah, okay, I heard that. That's all we want from this is, okay, I heard that. You're trying to connect some dots. And what we'll do is starting next week, we are going to go through some of the flight plans. We'll do a couple together where we pick up speed and we see that kind of the process. We'll have some that we work together, like literally step by step. We're gonna have a few days where we cut you loose to trip and fall a little bit on your own. So, because that's how you turn the figure it out or muscle on. So, so let's get, first of all, because we are getting into next week. So any questions based on in-person, what to expect, what to bring, what to organize? Any questions at all? I want to make sure we're all good with all of that stuff first. Everybody else sorted with your travel, with all your things? Okay. So we just don't want any surprises. So like I say, we'll have binders for you for any of those of you that ordered a binder. We will, like I say, that first night, that first few hours is the only night that you come a little later. And the reason is because we got to get all the instructors here and we need to get everything set up and sorted. So we need a few minutes for us to get that organized. Kind of will hit the ground running on Monday night. First thing you're going to do is take the test, final test. So it's a big one. Think of all the quizzes smashed together. If you know everything on that study guide, you're good. If you have any questions or you've gone back and studied any of the quizzes, you're good. So just make sure that you're solid on that stuff. You will need to pass that. It's kind of a non-negotiable. So make sure that you're good there. We will then from there on out, it'll be like the 1:30 class. So the rest of the nights outside of that first, you'll have some independent study time. Sometimes we're going through flight plans together, and then we'll have some extra little things to kind of reinforce, give you a chance to practice saying things out loud. I know we've given a little bit of practice, and I know we warned you, but most of the people will show up next week and will have not practiced a lot of things out loud. So you'll stutter a little bit on that. So we're going to give you some more chances to do that. In the FBO, there's a lot of space. So we'll be in a decent sized classroom for the group, but there are some areas like if you need, an hour while we're doing independent study or whatever to go set up somewhere else. Like there's kind of a cafeteria area. There's some outdoor. It's a beautiful time of year this year. I don't know what our weather's shooting for next week. I think most of the cold stuff during the middle of the day is kind of moving out. There is an outside chance we will have a plane come in. One of my planes will come in that if we can work it out with the crew that will let you go and get on one of my planes. I am running a charter out of St. George. So we got lucky in the last class. So you never know. It's currently scheduled, but we change every other mind every other day. So that's the current plan. We, like I say, we try and get usually almost every class, we have an Osprey that comes in to do a training mission that lands during class. And so we can kind of go out and look at that. But there is an observation deck. So there's type things. you know, and I do know some people just like, it's harder to study in groups, but I would say, you know, there is value to that. And we're going to talk to a little bit about that now. SkyWest, as well as Breeze, as well as, you know, every once in a while have somebody else come in, will come in and talk about like different companies, ask different questions. It's not an interview per se, but it's, you know, a chance that sometimes people want to put a best foot forward that day. So again, you don't need to dress up for it by any means, but like I say, a lot of people have wanted to bring something for that. I get mocked religiously for this, and you know, there's a lot of videos that they'll show you when you need comic relief, and they're usually, you know, something that I've done that's completely stupid. So be emotionally prepared for that. We do have a lot of fun during these couple of weeks, but I'm always cold. I live cold, and by the end of a couple of nights, I'll probably be in 3 of the jackets that I just start poaching them. So if you run cold, bring a jacket, because if you don't, no big deal. Like, people complain about being hot in there. I've yet to experience that. So like I say, I'm not one that loves air conditioning though. So Siwar.
I actually was thinking about that because do I need a really heavy jacket or just like a normal light jacket? I don't know what to carry with me.
No, I'm just a normal jacket. Like, I'm wearing the official ADA jacket here. You know, I'll do these. These are thinner, but I have like a compressible thing. And like I say, I usually have sweaters and stuff on. I'm just, again, I run ridiculously cold. So trying to let somebody in here. So like I say, it's not too crazy that, you know, like I say, you don't have to worry about a lot of different things, just something you can throw on over everything in the event that you run in that way. But like I say, for every time that I complain about being cold, 3 people of the other instructors will talk about how hot it is. So there is that. This time of year, it's not terribly warm. It's just, it's nice in St. George this time of year. A little cooler in the evenings, a little cooler in the mornings. Beautiful. I would bring something to get outside in, like, you know, sneakers or whatever. There's beautiful hiking. I don't know. Every group's a little different. A lot of the groups would do some, you know, Saturday morning, let's study, and then let's go to Zion and hike, or Snow Canyon, or whatever it is, just to get out and about. We will give everybody the opportunity to come to SkyWest and shadow. So you would probably want to be in like business casual, appropriate type clothing. It's not something you want to do. You're not forced. It's just something extra, but we will make sure anybody who would like that opportunity will get the opportunity to do that. It's usually a couple of hours. We take in groups of, you know, a few like 4 or 5 people at a time, so that you will actually kind of do a little tour and sit with the dispatcher for a couple of hours. So we do need those in smaller groups. Word to the wise, be a little flexible on that, because like I say, we'll just try and cycle people through. But also, one of the things there that if, you know, the OCC is actually melting down, we did have that happen in this last class. We'd had some massive tech issues. Everybody was in the red. It was pretty tense and stressful, people trying to, you know, get flights organized. And so there was one of the days we had to say, Control-Alt-Delete, sorry, no, and just kind of reschedule all those people for another day. So just be flexible on that. And if that would be the reason, like I say, you would probably, our desk loads are running a little high right now, so they'll be fast moving things, but we've had people see all kinds of things, you know, experience diversions, or, you know, sit with people on the mountain desks or IROP desks or different things that way. So a lot of different opportunities there. So if that's something you want to see, like dispatching, because dispatching right now, the way we do in this class is very, very different than you do once you have a computer interface to do a bunch of it for you. So it's kind of cool to see some of the dots connected. It's also cool to see some of the tools that are used. And like I say, there's no rhyme or reason to it. So some people may get a dispatcher that's kind of towards the end of their desk, so they're more flight following and they can answer more questions. Some people will sit down right at the beginning of somebody's desk and, you know, they're like, hey, I'll talk you through this, but I kind of got to get going. So, you know, you'll see different phases. So it's kind of cool that way, but you'll have an idea for that. So again, if that's something you're interested in, just come, you know, with some like business casual clothing that would be appropriate in the workspace. So there would be that. Like I say, test Monday. Then we're going to jump into the next flight plan on Monday night. Takes us, and it's going to sound crazy, but it'll take us the rest of Monday night and a big chunk of Tuesday to get through that. And it's kind of wild to believe that, you know, you're going to get through to the point that you can do those pretty quickly. So don't let it overwhelm you. During in-person, you will go through every emotion known to man, and it's everything from this is easy and no, I got this, to this is the stupidest thing I can ever do and I'm never going to pass this test or get a job. So we've already been there. We've all probably had our own freakouts or our situations, and so we get it. So like I say, there's nobody that's an instructor that has not been through it. So don't ever, if you're just needing space, you know, but this is also your opportunity to guide your own learning if you haven't up to now. So if you have questions, come with them, you know, ready to ask, you know, listen in, pay attention to, you know, other questions that other people are asking. That's what we're going to talk a lot tonight about, like, you know, dispatch resource management. And that's the listening in, you know, and oh my goodness, somebody asked a question, you know, about alternates. Well, I didn't catch that, or I didn't understand that. So let me listen in because I didn't even know I had that question. In the real world, you know, we'll have that listening in that, you know, you'll hear somebody under their breath say, oh my gosh, Denver, get it together, or something like that. And then you'll all of a sudden perk up and be like, oh, did I miss something? Do I have Denver flights? What's going on with Denver? That somebody would say something. So being able to take in a lot of information is good there. There will be moments that if you do feel a little hyperstimulated, because it does get going, especially as exciting as it does get. If you, like I say, if you need to go for an hour while we're doing independent study and you're going to like go over into the cafeteria area, we'll, you know, that's totally doable. I will admit I was one that when I like get really stressed, I just kind of have to like not see humans. And at that point when I took the class, there was not a lot of utilization in the space, and I literally locked myself in one of the corner offices for the majority of the time, anytime we weren't doing something, because I was so spun up. I was also behind. I hadn't taken the ADX. So, and I had a job that if I didn't pass my data on the ADX all in 1 week, I didn't have a job. So it was a little high stress for me. So again, big reason that we don't do that kind of stuff, because it's not useful. And it did put me so far behind in like ground school and stuff, which is again, why we just don't do that anymore. So it's a good thing. So a few things out there. It is far out there. It's out at the airport. For those of you not familiar with the area, like if you decide you need to run and get snacks or something, you're easily to get to the closest stuff, at least a 30-minute round trip, probably a little more by the time you pick a place and you stop and you go in and order and do all the things. There is a little restaurant pretty close, but they close at like 6 or 7. There is a new restaurant inside the FBO, but they close early as well. They close like at 4 or 4:30 or something, but it's kind of pretty new. And so those things are available. We do have fridges there. We do have, like, we're going to have drinks, and we'll have plenty of junk food. You know, become a dispatcher and you'll suddenly, if you didn't like sugar, you'll like it before, or before you didn't like it, you'll like it now. So, but we will have stuff like that. Usually we're bringing some cookies and some little things. And then Adam does organize food for the Tuesdays and Thursdays. So, you know, can be anything from pizza to just different random things that everybody likes. So different, it kind of cycles through every night as to which Tuesday and Thursday we do stuff. So the first week will be heavily focused on flight planning. The second week will be finishing up flight planning, and then it will be getting yourself ready and getting everybody organized. Okay, Bruce had some Chick-fil-A. I think usually this is a big Chick-fil-A class, or Jaden is the biggest chickie lover there is. I don't know who likes Chick-fil-A more, Jaden or Allison. So I think I'm the only one that's like, meh, you know, take it or leave it. But most people are big Chick-fil-A people. It's beyond me, but I won't fight City Hall. So second week anyway is that we are going to finish up flight planning, but their heavy focus is going to be on getting people ready for their date exams. So you're going to do a mock with one of the instructors. It's kind of a long process. We're going to go through all the questions. That's basically kind of us endorsing you to say, hey, you're ready to go to the date. The practical part, you sign off by getting through your flight plans. And so you need to get through those in order to be ready for a mock. Typically, people start taking those Monday and Tuesday for the people that are ahead of the games. Depending on how this class goes, typically we do have a date exam as early as the first Wednesday or the second Wednesday. So the second week, that Wednesday. We do have 3 days available to us, and they can all take up to 2 tests in a day. It is first come, first serve, first who's ready. So like I said, the mocks are similar to the day that, let's say you're doing your mock and you've got all your flight plans passed off, but you really don't do well on systems. We're going to have you come back hopefully the next day and redo those systems and get that ready. Now, we will start scheduling those that second week. Now, let's say you miss a couple of sections or whatever, and we have a bunch of mocks scheduled the next day. You'll kind of have to get squeezed in behind the people who haven't tried. So don't get frustrated with that. It's sometimes becomes a little bit of an anarchy where we're going to try and get everybody through their first shot, and then we kind of squeeze the second shots in as well there. If you do have a drop dead point that you need to be out of town, plan and organize yourself. Be ready to be on that list. Use your time wisely, do a little bit of extra. Like I say, do get out and do things like rest your brain a little bit, because you will find it helps you, process the information. I think if you get a little too intense, you don't kind of decompress that, you start making, just fatigue mistakes, which all of us make fatigue mistakes. So just be aware of that. Like I say, whether it's in the mornings or if you need to get up and study for a couple hours and then, or work on flight plans and then go take a couple of hours and do something before you come to class, just whatever works for you. You get to kind of do you, whatever that looks like for you. So, but like I say, the people that come in with an agenda and they come in ready to lock and load, those are the ones who end up finishing early and get to scout out of town. So it's all possible. But like I say, I'm going to tell you also, you're never going to feel ready, but we are not going to feed you to the wolves. If we do not think you're ready, because when we endorse you, it kind of ties you to our license, because I'm going to get in and we're going to put your stuff and I'm going to put my stuff and we're all going to be signed up together. So like I say, if we really don't think you're ready, we're going to tell you, let's redo this, that, or the other. And like I say, to be honest, if you can get through the mock, you're going to do okay in the date exam. So we push you further than the dates are ever going to do, because again, we want to make sure you're ready. So like I say, we do understand you're going to get nerves, things like that. So come with a plan, come organized, come ready to get in and get it done. If you're one that likes to wait till the end, that's totally cool. There's always, some people that just like that few more days. No harm, no foul. Everybody gets to do whatever is the best and easiest for them. So, but that's kind of how that will work. Any questions, comments, concerns? There's lots of stuff. For those of you new to St. George, there's a lot of stuff that's, that's pretty cool here. So, and you'll see everybody with their swigs, their, dirty sodas are kind of a religion here. So we got some weird, quirky stuff here, but I like it. So that and the Hydro jug, I feel like that's a Utah thing too. From anywhere I've traveled, is all the funny little drinking cups that different brands that we're all obsessed with, and the swig drinks or dirty sodas. There's several brands out there. You'll get to introduced to the crumble cookies, all the good sugar, stuff like that. So we'll have fun. Like I say, we as instructors, we do have a really good time together. So that's kind of fun. So, okay. So we're going to jump into some of these human factors here. However, I am going to share my screen first. Share. It's getting all fancy with my share time. Okay. Make sure we see it here. La-di-da. Okay. So again, everybody, this is going to be talking through the practical side of what dispatch looks like on a day-to-day. So, but we're getting into the human factor. Now, I feel like this is becoming a more and more relevant conversation now, specifically because of like AI, right? Has anybody even ever considered like, what is AI going to do to the aviation world? Yeah, trust me, it's actually something that I consider actively pretty much every day. You know, like I know at SkyWest, we're actively building AI tools to help, you know, part of it started with, you know, could we audit things automatically rather than humans auditing it? Well, and if we can audit, can we prevent it? So, and that became kind of the idea. You know, we started down this path, and it was kind of interesting a couple of weeks ago. You know, a brand new company out of Arizona that came and made a presentation of, hey, you know, we're doing this whole AI thing for pilots and for dispatchers and for things like that. We would love to see, you know, if this is something we can do. It does not take the human point or the part out at this point, which I do like, because there are some benefits of the human mind. There are the benefits to be able to figure something out when there's not a script. When there's not been data inputs that have been fed into it, when there's not been, you know, a group of rules and things that are going to put stuff in. So there's some cool stuff there, but there's certain things that humans don't do as well. So I think we have to consider both of those sides. So, okay. So I thought this is kind of a good little saying. Aviation in itself is not inherently dangerous, but to an even greater degree than the sea, it is terribly unforgiving of any carelessness, incapacity, or neglect. There's just so much out there that is unknown. We're dealing with Mother Nature, right? We're dealing with unforeseen things, as well as we're dealing with some human factors that are in there. So what human factors are the study of people, their relationships, activities, and how they impact safety, specifically in aviation. Okay, this is really going to look at the interface between human and machine. This could be human, the actual airplane, the controls. It could be the different systems of the aircraft, but it can be, for me as a dispatcher, it can be how I interface with a computer. So things that are going to influence us are fatigue. You know, I'll give real life examples. You know, I think I've learned more in the last 5 months in my new role what fatigue does to me, because I've worked insane hours. I have worked some insane days. I've done some crazy, you know, just days and days on end. And it's funny because things that I would normally not make a mistake on, you know, simply, you know, it was funny today. I was building up some flights in our system. It's not far as dispatch, but I was just putting them into our computer system. And I was assigning flight numbers and doing these things for our charter operations. And there was one that I literally deleted 3 times because I did something wrong on it. Like I transposed a flight number and I put it up in the system. I was like, oh, son of a. And then, you know, I put the skinny bear backwards in the, you know, once again, I'm just filling in boxes. But here I am multitasking and I'm tired and not quite feeling 100%. All of these things made it so that, granted, all of these mistakes I could undo, I could unravel, and I could fix. But all of those things impact us. Communication. How many of you are good communicators when you're tired or when you're not feeling well? Is there anybody that is? I mean, I'm not only not good at it, I can straight up be completely pain in everybody's rear end when I'm not feeling great or when I'm overly tired and I'm just snappy, you know, and I'm just not gathering all the information, or I just jump without listening, things like that. Just like even our basic coordination, like think of the pilots, things like that, just being able hand-eye coordination, you know, the more fatigued you are, the more you are compromised in any way, whether it's from, this is why we have a good thing on, you know, that liquor to clicker or bottle to throttle. Like if we're compromised in any way, just our hand-eye coordination, seeing things, you know, we don't, we don't have the depth for perception. We don't have the situational awareness that we need. And whether we're in a chair, we're in a cockpit, that's going to be compromised. Interpersonal issues. Like I say, the biggest way to, get to naughty Lindsay is, get me real hungry, get me real tired, get me irritable, get me not feeling well, and get me stressed out of my mind. I'm not a delightful person to be around. So, I'm guessing all of us have those situations. Personal issues. Would you think that, like, I'm, let's say I'm going through a divorce and I'm, having my, mom has cancer, or, something's wrong with my kids failing out of school, whatever it is. Do I perform better or worse under those circumstances? Anybody? Okay, got some thumbs down. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what it is. And I feel like a lot of people are pretty good at compartmentalizing and, getting to a point that, sometimes for me, like work, when I am stressed about other things, can be a little bit of an escape. But at the same time, I'm not at the top of my game because there's this underlying stuff on my nervous system that's just grinding on me. And it can be personal stress. It can be actual physical stress on my body. It can be, like I say, all of these other things coming together. Mental health, mental health is a big one. You look at like a lot of, I think, aviation workers, you look at emergency response workers, you work at, like, generally most of us are shift workers. So all of these things, there's actually like shift work syndromes. Now they actually have diagnoses for this because we work weird hours. We do weird things, and we may or may not sleep well, even if we're getting our 8 hours of rest. How well did we really sleep? Or are we adjusting our circadian rhythms? Outside things, as well as what could be going on chemically with us, or all of these different things. Mental health issues are going to affect decision-making skills. So all of these things, and again, nothing is good, bad, or otherwise. It's just the situation that we're going to go into. Training. How much training do we have? What do we need training on? So one of the things that I do like about aviation is that we are so focused on the education and looking at what we did wrong so that we can learn about it. I think that's probably one of my favorite things about the industry is, I know in certain industries, everything is, we're looking for the reason, we're looking for the person to blame, we're looking to point a finger. Where my experience in aviation has been that if you have a good intent and you're really trying, and you're not just doing lazy, boneheaded, they've told you 45 times to do this and you still choose not to do it. Generally, we're looking for, what is the data? Like, even if I fill out my ASAP, I made a mistake, and these are all the reasons surrounding it. It's not for a specific, I got to protect my own here. It's, the point is that we're disclosing because, gosh, what's going on in the room, that all of the people are filling out ASAPs for this specific reason. Are the flight loads too high? Have we not done enough training? Are people missing something specifically? And like I said, and that's kind of the cool thing, is things are going to go wrong. Things are going to come up where it's like, oh, well, gosh, we went ahead and missed that, but how do we not do it again? So, and that's what I find is that, like I look at SkyWest, is that, we're getting ready. I think our recurrent classes for the spring started today. So over the next couple of weeks, everybody that's a certificated dispatcher that's remaining qualified is going to go through a recurrent training. We do this twice a year. A lot of that is driven, like what things that we will go over this year based on what's going on in the room. I remember a couple of years ago, it was, kind of these back to basics type thing. It's just like getting people much stronger in the regulations and some of these basic things, and just similar concepts, or some of them are based on, I don't even know what it is going to be this year, to be honest, but I'll find out here sometime in the next 2 weeks. But it's, may have been over, gosh, we're missing all of these different things. I know our instructors will come and they'd ask us as dispatch supervisors, like, what are you seeing on the floor a lot? What are the errors that we're seeing? What are the questions that we're seeing? So, and like I say, we have the opportunity, like I say, just so you know, as a general rule, as long as you're trying your best, you'll probably be a much better dispatcher after you've got some experience and wisdom and some additional training. I remember one of our instructors that used to work for SkyWest and no longer does, remember, like, after had been there, was there longer than I had been. Like, I was newer and kind of did this. So by the way, I think I've been doing this wrong this whole last year because I learned this during recurrent. And, my trainer had kind of told me this way, and that's the way I always did it. But it turns out, my trainer was wrong. And like I say, we're only necessarily as good as we are and as the knowledge that we've been given. But also it's kind of cool because the way we dispatch now is very different than the way we dispatched when I started. The way we dispatched 6 months ago and the way I think that we will find ourselves dispatching 6 months from now. It's constantly changing. We get better tools. We get constantly learning. I know in my little department, dealing with these charters and these 121 supplemental flights that we do, first thing this morning, that was one of the things. We had a little meeting and I rallied up, our chief pilots and stuff. And I said, hey, stay on after the call. We need to decompress a few things that went on last night. And we just kind of went through it and, we all shot around some ideas and they, then at the end, it's like, well, let's do this moving forward. Let's see if this will work. So that constant being able to improve and move through it. So aeronautical decision making. So this becomes, decision making. We get to do it all day long, right? Like, what am I going to eat for dinner? Time am I getting up? Am I going to set the snooze? Am I not going to set the snooze? How am I going to drive to work? We're inundated as humans with decisions. So the specifics of aeronautical decision making, this is going to be defined as the systemic approach to the mental process used by pilots to consistently determine the best course of action in response to a given set of circumstances. Okay. So functionally what this means, and it's going to fall into the dispatcher ranges too, is I'm going to take in all the information that's coming at me. I'm going to put that puzzle together with the best that I know. Hopefully I've found as many pieces as I can, and I'm going to give a response. Sorry, as my voice comes and goes. So with this, information. So, I receive response from a pilot, telling me that there's a medical emergency on board. I'm going to want to quickly gather information. What can I get from them? Do they need to talk to a doctor? Do they feel they need to get on the ground? What do they need to do? I'm also at the same time, I'm going to look at the map. Where are they? Like, what kind of fuel do they have left? How close are they to their to their destination? If they're landing in LA and they're, 15 minutes from LA, very different set of decisions that I will make and I will talk to them about versus we just took off from Seattle headed to LA and they have a reason to not continue to LA. Okay. So and I've seen the range things. I mean, I've seen a dispatcher, not in a medical situation, but there was a question where, they were 3/4 of the way to their destination and he felt something and he wanted to send them back to where they came from. That crew ended up doing a couple of loops where they're like, no, let's still go to our destination. So sometimes there's some back and forth and sometimes that ended up a good decision-making learning opportunity, as to where can we find information? Who can we ask? Where can we get that wisdom on what to do with it? Like I say, there's a big difference from when I was a new dispatcher out on my own and I was pretty sure every plane was going to fall out of the sky. And my worst terror was we were going to have to divert and I wasn't going to have a plan. What was I going to do? And Now, for the most part, it's come on, we're gonna have to do a divert. Let's do these 3 steps and let's move them on their way. It's not that big of a deal. Now, do I still see things every day that I have to deal with that is brand new? Sure do. So now, decision making can be learned through the classroom, okay, and it can be learned through real world experience. And it's kind of taught consciously and unconsciously. What do I mean by consciously and unconsciously? Any ideas? Any thoughts? Let's see some hands. I'm kind of tired of me talking. Brian.
Maybe just as you observe some of your other coworkers and how they handle situations. I mean, you may not proactively be thinking, oh, I should do it this way, but just, in the back of your mind, you just see how people are handling different situations, and maybe you just kind of learn to adapt.
Okay. Yeah, you can learn I actually have like less stress almost based on who's sitting next to you. But you can also learn stuff just by, has anybody like had a situation where I did that yesterday or last week and it burned me, and so I'm never going to do that again? Kind of idea of little baby PTSD, not to mock the real PTSD, but has anybody ever had that situation? We all have somewhere in our life something weird that, in my past life prior to, like, think about as superstitions. Many, many years ago, I worked in the human sport arena and taught at a college teaching like athletic training. And I had this horrible superstition, and it's because every time that I had to use air splints, it was raining and I was face down in the mud on a football field, and it was 100% of the time. Like, I got to the point that it would rain and I'm like, how do I get out of this tonight? And it had nothing to do but kind of this subconscious, unconscious space. I was connecting dots that kind of created fears, things like that. In aviation, how you'll see this all the time, 10 clear, beautiful, not a cloud in the sky and no wind. And, captain will call you and tell you, I'm not dealing with Chicago again because of the mess that was there yesterday or 3 days ago or whatever. So I need like an hour of hold fuel. And even though 3 days ago it was a complete disaster in Chicago, but it's beautiful today, we still somehow connect those dots unconsciously because I'm not having that pain and suffering yet again, even though there's no clues to why that's going to happen today. You will find that there are a couple of airports that for some reason become your nemesis. Or for me, there are certain places that I will never list it an alternate, not if my life depends on it. So just so you know, because for whatever reason, I've got this unconscious learned, or possibly this subconscious, like it could have been something that did burn me, I think I did list Twin Falls once. I will personally never do it again, even though we listed on as an alternate all day long. It's just, I think it was my most stressful diversion I had. And it was early on in my, or one of my, not one of my first few diversions, but definitely in my first 6 months. And it was a horrible experience for me. And it gave me a lot of undue stress, and which was funny, we didn't end up even diverting there. It was just threats to divert, but it was such a bad experience that it's just weird, my weird place. So everybody, that's what we're talking about by this conscious versus unconscious, because sometimes there's not this wisdom or this A plus B equals C, or the math doesn't work, but it's just this visceral, nope, I can't do that because I'm connecting it to some old dots. So some of that could be real stuff. Some of that could be, not real. When we're looking at information, like a few things that were things that stood out to me as good advice. I remember at one point, like really fretting over, should I add an alternate? We don't legally need one and whatever. But it was like, I was right on the edge and I kept going back and forth between the charts and looking at different models. And I remember this was still back from a trainer, and it's advice that I took on. He's like, if you're fretting this much over it, maybe you just put one on as a discretionary one. Like if you're really having to think about this and you're saying, hey, everything's telling me it's going to drop, and but I don't want to be, frivolous with the fuel and all the different things. But that was like, sometimes we do overthink things. So sometimes we underthink things, but a lot of times, like, you get to a point, and this becomes that unconscious thing as well, where, you dispatch, you've been working the same shift for the last 6 months, and it's all fall, and you're dispatching up in the Pacific Northwest, and the temperature and dew point are on top of each other, and it's about to hit sundown. Even though it's tenant clear, you know what's going to happen because it happens the same way every day at the same time. And that's what you can start to look at trends. You can look at patterns that are happening, and that's a lot of that unconscious stuff. So we got to separate the part that's patterned versus the stuff that's my own PTSD because that burned me for whatever reason. So like I say, classroom training, this is going to set you up. Ground school is going to set you up even more. But I will admit, like, I'd never been less prepared in my life than sitting down with a trainer on the job and being told to dispatch my first 15 flights. Like, felt like nobody taught me all the right stuff. But even though I had a lot of information, I feel like that real world experience, and sometimes turning on the figure outer muscle and figuring out where to find the information, that's going to help you as much as anything. So, okay, some different attitudes that we can get into that kind of get us, okay? So these are these hazardous attitudes. These are going to be like anti-authority, like, do not tell me. I'm going to say that I think this is one of the bigger ones for me that's like a pet peeve for me. I can think of a dispatcher that I'm going to say is actually a pretty good dispatcher, unless you give a suggestion or hey, if this works, would you consider? And it's like, yeah, don't tell me what to do. And it's interesting because I think the minute you shut down and you're basically, nobody can tell me this is my flight, I'm in operational control, and you like hard grab into that, I feel like you shut off any of the wisdom. You shut off any of that periphery, that situational awareness that you're getting into. So I will admit, I don't like being told what to do, but I feel like there's times and places for me to check that. I think in an operational control center is definitely that place. Making things collaborative, like I say, why do I need to make the same mistake somebody else did? If somebody says, oh, Denver's about to go gross, it's going to be helpful for me to listen because, I'm not filling out the ASAP because I didn't want to be told, or, different things that way. I can't tell you how many times, like, fuel planning has become something that was a problem because you kind of warn people, a common thing in like Aspen. Okay, so I'm from Aspen. I've done a lot of jump seating there. I spent a lot of time there, both on the ground as well as, doing mountain desk, dispatching, things like that. I feel like people will, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to add this fuel because fuel is a solution. Fuel is not a solution. Fuel is not a plan. It's just, it does potentially give me options. But when people don't listen to fuel planning things up in Aspen, sometimes having too much fuel kind of burns you. If you're a little too heavy and you only had a small window to get in, especially on some ERJs, things like that. There's a lot of times people are buggering out of Aspen because they just can't get on the ground with the fuel they have on ground. Because I don't have the ability to hold out for 30 or 45 minutes. So like being willing to have people say, hey, this is a better way, and considering it is going to help you a lot of things. So that impulsivity, so do it quickly, just clicking through the buttons, not paying attention. That's what I've always said is if I ever become a dispatcher, that just clicks through the buttons and doesn't pay attention to what I'm doing, it's probably time for me to find a new job. So there are times and places where you got to get a release out there. You've got to make sure you're legal to go. You've got to do it very, very quickly, but never because your brain's on autopilot. Never because, there's been times that, I worked stuff up in advance because I'm, when I'm running a desk, I'm definitely one that doesn't like to get surprised. This is probably my own personal thing, but I hate flights being taken off my desk. In fact, when I last year injured my hand and was now learning to dispatch and do everything with one hand, with my non-dominant hand, use a mouse, use everything, I was freaking slow. Just so you know, I was crazy slow. And that was the most soul-sucking thing I ever had to do, to say, I can't manage this many flights if something goes wrong, because, I just can't move the computer software fast enough. Because I only have, half my faculties with me. So with that being said, I hate it. And I'm always been one that really works up ahead. Now there's some pluses and minuses to that. So the pluses are that it's harder to catch me with all of a sudden 17 red flights because I wasn't paying attention and they snuck up on me, and suddenly when I have, all these flights due, I have a bunch of amendments and I have, a diversion. I have all this crazy stuff going on, right? So I don't often get that, but you do have to watch that impulsivity. You have to watch that, hurry quick, because I do work stuff up and have a good idea what's going on, but I still have to go back and take the time to double check everything because, well, gosh, I may have planned it on a dry runway, and if I don't pay attention and that runway became wet, I do have to double check. I do have to double check because maybe my alternate did become illegal or whatever it is. But it's easier to double check it than it is to kind of, fret through and kind of organize stuff like that. So I don't ever want to assume, that my first information was correct. Also, we need to be rapid. Sometimes we don't have a ton of time to really analyze, but sometimes asking an extra question will help you so much to make a better decision. So like I say, taking a breath, will serve you in aviation, even when you're kind of under the gun on things. Taking a breath, taking in the whole picture for a minute, running through kind of a mental checklist, and taking that will help you from making impulsive mistakes as well. So not me, impulsivity, this would never happen to me. So it's going to happen to you. Whatever you think is not going to happen to you, it's going to happen to you. You're going to have diversions. You're going to have, medical incidents. You're going to have, times, like I say, I think I shared in the first of the class when I straight up in my gut knew I should have planned an alternate and made jokes with it with the captain. And we both decided to live dangerously because we legally didn't need one, even though we both know what was going to happen. Yeah, it did happen to me. Like I said, I got lucky. I had the minute I did see it happen, I made a quick plan of, how long can we stay in the air before we got turned back and go home. Back to Seattle. This was Seattle to Spokane. So it was a short little flight. And we did get lucky. We were the only plane in about an hour and a half that did get in that very tiny window that there was, just exactly landing minimum. So ton of luck. So, but you're all going to miss alternates. You're all going to break a FAR. You're all going to make a poor decision. Even if everything is safe and everything ends up okay, you're all going to make a bad decision at some point. And those who don't think that they're capable of that are honestly the more dangerous ones. Those who aren't willing to listen to feedback, and this is pilots, dispatchers as well, they're the ones that'll probably create problems or have issues. I think one of my some of my more interesting jump seat experience, one particularly was a brand new first officer, like brand spanking new. I think it was his first leg that he was going to be flying after his ground school and training. And the trainer check airman that was in there as the PIC was really interesting to watch because we had some of the navigational equipment went down. while we were on taking off right here out of St. George. And it's a little bit of a complicated procedure getting out. And it was interesting to sit there and watch because you could feel something wasn't quite right, but watching that decision making going between the two and watching the PIC trying to troubleshoot at the same time, make that decision, like taking over to kind of get us out of a potentially dangerous situation. And everything went flawlessly. Everything went really great. But to watch them with absolute humility talk through, and even the PIC said, gosh, I should have done this differently. And okay, I needed to check this, and this, and like just talking through their errors in not a way to say that, oh, you should have known, or oh, you should have done this, but that this can happen. And, you know, okay, I should have done this, you know, I should have done that, and go back and forth. It was possibly one of the bigger learning experiences I've had, just watching them go through that space from not putting up a wall and not trying to just point a finger or, you know, well, gosh, you're a crappy pilot because you did this, you know, because none of that's necessary. You know, they were able to troubleshoot the equipment. Everything was back working again. They went through the QRH, you know, they had to go through their steps, and it was really cool. So, you know, being able to, like I said, I think you got to drop a lot of your attitudes to be able to talk through stuff like that. So, like I say, it's going to happen to all of us. Whatever it is we don't want, it's going to happen at some point. I can do it all by my big girl self. This one I feel like is one in a way that gets me. I'm definitely not in my dispatch job. I'm not one that like takes chances for the most part, especially not without like some sort of safety, you know, even though I joke about, hey, we're living dangerously, I should probably put an alternate, even though legally we don't need one and it's 10 and clear and beautiful. I'm just guessing what's going to happen. You know, I also knew that I could fly all the way to Spokane, turn around and come back to Seattle without any issue because of the amount of fuel that was on board. Like I didn't even have to run a burn to figure that out. So I don't really consider that I'll take foolish chances in this space, but sometimes like I feel like a mistake I make is I do want to figure it out by my big girl self, and I want to try, and I do want to, you know, give me a second, like, you know, let me see if I can find it. And I think that's where I have to know and be able to discern that line between I need to practice this and I need to figure it out and I need to do it once so that I can learn and do it better versus I'm out of my element, I need help. You know, and I think it's one of those things that every dispatcher has to learn to, you know, when do you scream uncle? You know, it is not okay to have, you know, a whole bunch of red flights and not reach out somewhere to get help. Because again, you only create more workload from you because now you're going to have, you know, 10 phone calls coming in instead of 4 because, you know, everybody's saying, where's my release? Being able to ask opinions, you know, there's so many times. I remember when I was especially new, like summer routing through the weather, like just disgusting, right? All these pop-up thunderstorms, all this stuff. And, you know, being able to say, hey, I don't know which way to go, you know, versus, well, let me just build a bad route or do something crazy. It's okay to get this extra information and say, I don't feel like I have any good choices. What do you think? Well, that's when I learned for somebody to say, gosh, you know, this is a great route for now, but, you know, use that little slider bar. Let's see what's going to happen when we have a little time past us, when we're going to, you know, it's funny, like people spend not hours, but, you know, considerable time building a route to find out that storm is going to be long since beyond what the route is. So like learning that and I wouldn't have known that if I wasn't willing to, you know, ask people's opinions and see, you know, things like that with that same place, being willing to make a mistake on occasion, you know, but so the next one would be resignation. So that's that helplessness. Like, it doesn't make a difference. The pilot's going to do whatever he wants anyway. So why does it even matter that like I have this release and then I have to let's just throw some fuel on board and, you know, he can go drive the bus and figure it out. Which, you know, that idea of why bother, it's kind of like the idea, you know, that thought of, You know, if I'm just complaining about the problems and, you know, I never come with a solution, that's a little bit of resignation, you know, versus, hey, gosh, I have this thought, you know, could we consider doing this? Sometimes it's a horrible idea, but at least have a consideration and an idea. That's one of the things, like I say, I appreciate. I don't know how other airlines are with this. I feel like a lot of them would be pretty open to it, but you know, in SkyWest, there's one thing that somebody's always going to point out the problems versus the person that says, hey, have we thought about this? You know, I mean, I threw one out there the other day that I'm like, why have we never thought about this? Like, can somebody give me some space and tell me? And the answer to my question was, I don't know that we've ever done that, but if so, it's been so long that nobody remembers, you know? So it did create some thought and it did create some conversation. So did it get the solution I would desire? Not necessarily, but we talked stuff through. We learned a few things. So like I say, there's always a use for learning. There's always, you know, we can make a difference with our choices and with our learning and with our education. Okay, do we need another little stretch break? I feel like this is, you know, less memory, things like that. 15 minutes or so. Okay, stretch up. So 5. So let's come back at 20. We'll see where we go from there. Okay, did we get everybody back? Okay. Very good. So, has anybody got any stories other than just me that clearly makes a lot of mistakes in life of using any of these hazardous attitudes and having it end up a bad choice? Because I know everybody's got one, so should I say one that you would like to share? I think I've used all of these at some point. So, Brett.
I can't think of any specifics right off the top of my head, but I know that I pretty often am susceptible to the anti-authority hazardous attitude and impulsivity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like I say, it's interesting. Have you guys ever found that like most of your good and your bad qualities are two sides of the same coin? You know, like sometimes that impulsivity, you know, like I tell people I have zero, especially at work, I have zero problems making a decision, doing it quick and falling on my face. And, you know, if I knock my teeth out on this one, we won't do it again. So there is a fine line between being too impulsive, meaning I didn't gather the information and I jumped to judgment. You know, I think it's common, like, especially with other humans, like something, you know, jumps up and you're suddenly, this person is horrible, or, you know, whatever. This is a really bad pilot because he had a bad day and he, you know, snapped at me or whatever, you know, and like jumping to those conclusions versus being paralyzed by the fear of a decision because you're afraid that you'll make a wrong decision. And I think it's a fine line that becoming in that space that you are going to make a wrong decision. So you sometimes have to try and see what works, but gather the information and do the best you can with the tools you have at the time. That's kind of what you can do. So, but all of us have like some things that we are. Is there anybody else that has some of these attitudes that you have more of a proclivity toward? I think I definitely fall in those first two a little bit, that, you know, don't tell me what to do. And I don't necessarily, like I say, I don't necessarily just do it quick, because it's interesting in my life. There's certain things that are very hard for me to make a decision on. In fact, it's a joke that don't make me choose what to have to dinner tonight, because I feel like I make so many decisions all day long that I don't want to pick something like that. But so it's kind of interesting. Like I say, I think most of my best qualities and my worst qualities are absolutely one and the same. Intensity. Like I'm an incredibly intense person, especially at work. And like I say, that does me real well when, you know, you know, it's like the joke even in my current role that, you know, I will kick and scream and the ship's not going down without me, like, you know, doing everything I can to prevent it, but I will also do it to my detriment. So, okay, let me get back here where I was. Okay. So stress. How many of you guys have had stress? Share some situations that create stress for you. So we play roulette. Kiri, what are situations that cause stress for you?
This moment right here.
Okay, pretty example. Okay, what happened to your body when you had stress? Because I just pointed you out. This was so good.
The inability to think clearly and the inability to no, I'm joking, but no, stress can be a disruptor of normal activities or normal functions.
Okay, so I put you on the spot. It was very hard to come up with a good answer, right? Other than, well, what you just did cause stress. chances are your heart rate started to run a little bit. Chances are your mind started to race a little bit because you're suddenly looking for the right answer, if there is a right answer. Possibly, are many of you the ones who don't want to put on the spot ever? Like, I don't love that situation unless I choose it. Like, I'm not even one for me personally. Like, call me up on stage and give me an award. Like, that does not motivate me at all. In fact, it's the opposite of motivating to me. So, it's causes different stress reactions. For some people, like I say, public speaking in front of a crowd, they would, rather not do it. We have certain instructors who love to teach in person. They just love it and they really thrive in that space. They really, really, really hate doing it online for whatever reason. Different types of stressors. Different types of, do any of you have a subject in school? Like, for instance, even during this class, is there one of the things, for some people it's the systems, for some people it's the math. You're going to start doing a little math. What's funny is it's all third grade math. Everything we're doing is not complicated math, but do any of you have a thing from your past in life that, your teacher told you were bad at math, or your parents told you were bad at math, and so you've never let that go? That will create stress, because for whatever reason, we've got this space against math and we're going to start doing a lot of math. Like I say, it's not complicated. It's not advanced math by any means, but it's remembering the math. That fear of the unknown, and this is going to sound crazy. And I think I spent a little bit of time with nieces and nephews this last weekend. And I think when you turn into old folks like myself, you start to look at some of these kids and I can see, what's funny is I don't see my good qualities in them. Like, in each individual, I'll find like the bad qualities of me. And like one of them that I have found in a couple of my nieces specifically is they don't like to fail, but it's to a detriment. Like, I remember as a kid, I didn't participate in things that I wasn't guaranteed to win, that I wasn't completely confident in my ability to win. In fact, in my family to this day, that if we're all, everybody's going to I'm going to bet $20, and we love to put some money on stuff. I don't know. We're kind of weirdos that way, or we bet weird stuff. The minute I put money on the deal, everybody's out, because they know that I'm not putting money down unless I'm going to win. And so the minute I said, I'm like, yeah, I'm in for that, everybody's like, okay, no, I'm out, because that's just kind of my history, is I don't like to do that. And that is, good. I've got a competitive nature, things like that, but it's also at my detriment, because the stress of learning a lot of new things or something that I'm not inherently going to be good at. I'm going to be honest, aviation is probably the first job, especially dispatch specifically, was one of the things that I will say that I had to get way out of my comfort zone. And that in its own right created so much stress for me the first year doing it, until I finally fell into my rhythm. And I will straight out tell you, I remember on my comp check, they're like, okay, make sure to have snacks, make sure to, get up and stretch, make sure to not become hyper vigilant. Remember, take a deep breath on occasion, they told me all the things to do. I'm going to tell you what, that test was so high stakes for me. I'm going to be honest, I was so far over training. I was like, I'm literally, if I fail this check, I'm like, I'm not even coming back the next day, because I'm so over this. And I wasn't inherently, I don't feel like it was something that I was just naturally good at, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but that's my own perception of myself, is that this was not easy for me. And it was not something that I felt was second nature to me. But for whatever reason, I was in with both feet, and I felt like my competitive side kicked in, that I couldn't give up. I couldn't give up and not do it. But I remember during that comp check, I didn't stand up. I don't know how many times I was even breathing normally during that day. I never took a drink. I never moved for 10 hours. And it's funny, because they decompress at the end of the comp check, and what went well, what went right, poorly, things like that. And they ask your opinion first. And then the person who did your comp check will kind of give you their feedback. And it's like, my first thing was, well, I did everything that you told me not to do. I was hypervigilant. I was freaked out. I didn't move. I've never, changed my perspective. Like all the things that they, so it's one of those things that like the stress of that environment, like completely put me into a knot. But all of us have different things that are different stressors. Certain stresses are good. Has anybody heard of good stress? I'm guessing this isn't new to a lot of you. Is all stress bad?
No, I think working out, exercising, that's putting stress. You're purposefully putting stress on your body. That's good stress.
Okay, but let's take even working out just as an example, because I think it's one that is suitable in the fact that a little bit of working out is good, right? Can you take it too far?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, has anybody had an injury due to working out or playing in a sport or whatever it may be? Specifically an overuse injury. Has anybody ever done that? Yeah? Okay. So, but yeah, it's very, very common that you can have a little bit of exercise is good and a medium amount of exercise is good, but you can take it too far. There's actually exercise addiction. There is pushing through injuries. There is, different things that can happen. One of the kind of worst places you can do is perform when you're absolutely exhausted, because your body does not respond the same. Your tissue in itself does not respond the same. So stress is one of those things that not enough, not so good, too much, not so good. It's about finding that happy middle space. And it's not about finding this static place of stress. It's learning how to go back and forth between the two without injury, without your body failing, without your mental state failing, because you can't keep it at a perfect rate. Being able to know when you've got to kick it into another gear because it's a little harder right now, but then also know how to spool down, if that makes sense. So, the same thing is being able, like if I'm exercising a lot, do we have any like distance athletes or aspiring distance athletes in here? Runners, cyclists, anything like that? Caitlin, what's your sport of choice?
Well, I used to do distance freestyle and butterfly for swimming.
Swimming. Okay, but
And I
distance.
injured myself, yes.
Yeah, because you injured yourself. Okay, well, there's that. That is a high demand sport, especially on a few joints. But it's interesting and for any of you who've ever like looked into getting into running or cycling, long distance swimming, things like that, right? You don't train at the same intensity every day, correct? You will have speed days. And this will even go for those of you that like, sports that chase a ball, football, basketball, soccer, all of those things. You don't do the same thing every day. You might practice a specific skill. You might practice the distance stuff. So for like runners, they might have, a speed day where they're trying to do exercises that will get their legs to turn over faster. They might do a day of training that they kind of push their anaerobic ability. They might do a long run. Very common for somebody, planning for an event, whether it's long distance swimming or running or whatever, that once a week they go out there and they just have to go far because it trains different parts of your body. And I think that's the same thing when we're looking at and then you have to have a rest day. That's the other thing, is you have to know when to come down. How many of you can also tell kind of when you're starting to get sick? Okay. Most people, and everybody's got a few things. Like I say, my first sign that I'm either getting sick or that I'm really, really, really tired is, you're probably catching it tonight, I start to lose my voice. The more tired I am, the more I start to squeak. And I can even do that when I'm feeling just fine. I just, that's where my body is saying, slow down, you got to take a minute, right? Your body has got too much going on. Now that can happen for me with either extreme mental pressure, it can come with physical pressure, It can come with just lack of sleep. The same kind of, if you go on the flip side, what happens to you when you're just not challenging yourself at all? When you're, I guess there's nothing going on. Do you ever find yourself in a position where you're almost sleeping too much? Has anybody ever been in that space? Probably when you were younger. It happens to a lot of us when you're younger, but it's like, again, we've crossed that line where I got myself too tired, I've got myself run down, and I need sleep so that my body will work, so my brain will work, my emotions will work. Then I kind of find some sleep, and then I, find myself that I need to crash out for 4 days. But then I get to a point that like I'm still groggy on the other side, where, finding that middle place and being able to go back and forth and being able to find that resilience, be able to speed up when I need to speed up, run from the tiger when the tiger's chasing me. But I think animals in the wild, especially like you go to Africa on the safari or whatever, the predator chases, and if I'm the prey, I'm going to run really fast. But then there's not that downtime afterwards. It's like they're on or they're off. It's like the animals are going to run from the predator, and then when the predator is gone, they just stop and they go back to normal animal stuff. They don't have to think about it. They don't ruminate about it. They don't, gosh, should I have run faster? Should I have done this or should I have done that? They stop and they go back into that recover mode. That's what like a healthy reaction to stress looks like. Unfortunately, we're human and we live in a very fast-paced world, and we're going to have all of these different signs that most of us aren't even going to listen to until it's actually too late, until, somebody's in trouble. But we put this extra brain power into it where we have to think about it, and we have to, like I say, we're great ruminators, which we can almost relive stress over and over and over and over and over again, even though the stress isn't even there. We're just thinking about the lion chasing us is enough to create these responses. So being able to recognize it, learn what the things are that fire you up more, learning to be able to know when you need to walk away for a minute, when it's like I tell people at work all the time, I'm like, if I cry, it actually 99% of the time means zero. It's just, that's my way to release. And I can be laughing through it, and it's just like all that stress or whatever has to come out my eyeballs. And so I don't want to be bugged about it. Like, don't ask me if anything's wrong. I'm just like, I just need to let the pressure valve go a little bit. And I know that about myself, that I know that that really means anything. So it's nothing to get worked up about. It's nothing to, oh my gosh, you're going to lose it. It's like, no, this is how I'm going to prevent myself from losing it. So like knowing your own signs, knowing when you are at a done point, I will straight up say, this was maybe 2 weeks ago. I'd had a really rough go. I will tell you, going back to dispatch seems like such an easy job now. But like I'd had a very high stress few days, and I hit my mental limit. And it's funny, you're showing all these symptoms in this picture here. I mean, I was headachy. I was exhausted to a point that I didn't know how I was going to even get home in my car. My stomach felt sick. I could swear during the day I was having a heart attack. I was, wearing my shoulders as earrings. I was probably a reason I kind of led to getting sick. Like all of these different things were going on. And I had a point that I actually looked at my boss and I said, I'm going to do something I'm going to regret. And so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go home now. I'm going to sleep it off. And that's just what I needed to do. So I was starting to recognize, because these symptoms were kind of starting to go a little crazy, and nothing good was going to come out of my mouth. Nothing good was going to come out of any outcome. I was not going to be able to make a good decision. And I was probably going to be not a good and enjoyable human to be around, because I was at my end point and I didn't need to talk about it. I couldn't talk about it. I just needed sleep. And that's really what it came down to was, that's what they were like, what can we do? And that was my question, is like, let's talk about it tomorrow. I need to sleep this off, or I'll probably, murder all the people. So recognizing stress and looking at what your symptoms are. Like I say, the minute my voice starts to go, I know I probably need to consider a few things. Everything we do is an outcome. I remember, and just so nobody's surprised, like that first 2 or 3 months on a dispatch desk, suddenly, like, I was not used to sitting at a desk, and suddenly I'm sitting at a desk and I'm hyper vigilant and I'm stressed out, and now my back hurt, and I was staring at a screen and I wasn't blinking, and I was sure I was going blind. Like, I remember like 3 of us from my dispatch class were like, we got to go to the eye doctor. We all thought we were going blind, and it was literally, we all of a sudden, all 3 of us ended up going to the eye doctor the same week, and we all got told the same thing. You're so stressed out, you're not blinking, and you need eye drops, because, that was simply all it was, because we were doing weird things. So, being able to recognize symptoms, and even if they're different that you are thinking they are, but getting help for that will help you manage it and get to that point that you can, run away from the tiger when you need to be, but then you can slow down and just take a drink and, eat some leaves or whatever it is, like the animals in the animal kingdom does. So the body is going to be your heavy barometer of stress. Like I say, whether it's psychological stress or physical stress, there's probably a bunch of you that will find out that the day after you take your date exam, that's all you really want to do is you want to take a nap. Did anybody ever do this in college where you could go through finals, for those of you who went through like typical university, and then the day after your last final was done, when you're, woohoo, I have 2 weeks off, you get sick as a dog? Like, that makes no sense, right? Like, yeah, everybody's been there, right? I get a lot of thumbs for that. Okay, again, this is your body, you can override this signal for so long, and then it's finally going to crash. And usually, it comes at a inconvenient time. You go on vacation, and that's when you get sick. So this is just those demands that are going to happen. Okay, so we're going to, our normal reaction, and part of this is healthy. We're going to release adrenaline. We're going to increase our metabolism. We are going to, basically, like, our eyes are going to dilate, like we're going to take in more information. We're going to send blood flow from our brains and from our digestive tract and things like that. We're going to send it to the muscles. We're going to send it to stuff that's going to make us run away. We're going to, like I say, we're going to make our hearing is going to become intensified, things like that. The problem is, this is not going to be something you can do long term. Your heart rate's going to go up. You're going to breathe a little faster. You're going to have slightly high blood pressure. You might sweat a little bit more because your body can temperature regulate. You do increase your blood sugar a little bit. Okay, what you're happening is you're breaking down stuff inside your muscles, inside your body, that you can now use as fuel. So you're breaking stuff down so that you can get sugar available to go. And like I say, all of this is normal. All of this is so that we can run away from the tiger. The problem is, for humans, the tiger just doesn't seem to go away. So short-term stress, not the end of the world. Chronic long-term stress, that's when we start to get things that start to wear on us. Our immune system starts to go. We just get that, chronic fatigue. We get all of these things that are very real conditions because we've just pushed our body too far. You can also have that idea of a single stress versus a cumulative stress, okay? You have a stressful day at work. You can handle that. But then you start talking about those other things that come up. Somebody's having marital problems or relationship problems, whatever that looks like. Somebody's having, trouble with their children in school. Somebody's having trouble, finding a new job. Somebody's having trouble with some chronic health problems that are just, you don't know what's going on, or you don't know how you're going to feel, or mental health problems, or, your mom's going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, so that's a stress, and you're a caretaker. You're under financial duress. You lost your job and you were out for 6 months, and this feels very high stakes. All of these things on their own are challenging. You start combining them and you're going to have increased stress responses. Like I say, during this class, you know, it was high stakes for me. Like I was looking for a change in life. This fell into my lap. It was smashed into a very compressed time frame. And it was also, gosh, if you don't pull all of this off in this week, there is no room for wiggle. And by the way, the only reason you got into this was flight benefits. You're going to lose that if you screw that, because you can't go back to where you were from. Gosh, it was like a lot of extra, you know, there was going from that. I wasn't sleeping well. You know, just the stress of making sure that I passed and got into ground school. Cause like I said, I didn't have the normal interview process where that goes through, because I did that before because of the pathway program I was in. I didn't have a place to live. I lived out of a carry-on suitcase that I came for in person. I didn't get any extra clothes or anything for, I think it was after ground school and actually like my first 3 weeks into on-the-job training, like because of the way our schedules worked, they were a little weird. Like, I mean, those were all of those things that compacted stuff. No wonder my body was a total wreck. No wonder I wasn't having any fun doing this, but also no wonder I felt like I was having to read everything 3 times to get it, because I was not just trying to conceptualize it. My brain is out busy doing other things, right? You know, my brain's not going to the retention part of my brain. The blood's going to the fight or flight part of my brain. So, and the fight or fight part of my self that's still going to run away from the tiger, even though I'm sitting at a desk. So, okay, so what do you do with all this stuff? Like, first of all, I think identifying it. I think that was one of the hardest things for me in life. Was I grew up with a parent who did not believe in stress. Had stress and reacted towards stress, however, would say that stress didn't exist. Took a long time for my parents to say, okay, yeah, things can be hard and you might have to deal with it. But I think just identifying, like I say, we were talking about earlier this evening, that first idea that, you know, next week, you know, when you come in, you're going to have a lot of times that it's going to benefit you to be in the collective and learning from the other people's questions and things like that. But if you find yourself spooled up and no longer being able to process information, that's something you have to internally sense and say, okay, I need to go walk around the building. I need to go sit out and do a little bit of study and memorization for a minute, because I've kind of checked out of this when I'm, you know, this flight plan. I need to come back to it and regroup. Being able to say what has got me spooled up to the point that I'm not functioning anymore. Okay, so again, fatigue. I think this is probably one of the biggest ones. I think in the United States specifically, I'm sure this is that way in a lot of countries, but I think in aviation, as human, let's step back to being humans in the United States. I think we live on chronic fatigue, even if that's not a diagnosis we have. I think most of us have run with not just under sleep, but under rested for probably years. I mean, does anybody have like the wearables and like track your sleep and stuff like that? Does anybody do stuff like that? No, we have nobody that wears like the Oura rings and stuff like that, or the little bands, keep track. It's a common thing. When I started to do it, it was like almost embarrassing. In fact, I made a joke about it not long ago at work, and I'm like, my ring told me, sorry, my ring is charging right now, but I said, my ring told me. And my boss, who directly looked at me and said, the rest of us don't need your ring to tell us that you're losing your mind, just so you know. So yeah, but like I say, if you looked at, like, I was getting, even the nights I was getting sufficient sleep, I wasn't resting deeply. I wasn't getting enough REM sleep. I wasn't getting enough deep restorative sleep, things like that. So, you know, I think we're just living a world where I'm guessing at one point in your life, you probably had more than one job, or you've had, you know, been doing school and a job, like probably a lot of you during this class, you know, plus you've got kids or family obligations, or, you know, just walking through the world right now, I think is challenging. So fatigue, I think, is one of our biggest things that attacks everybody. Now we're going to compound it in aviation. We're going to give you really weird schedules. And yeah, we get so much time off, but As much as I will tell you that my chosen dispatch schedule was 2 a.m., and if I went back to dispatching or dispatch supervising, I would pick that again. I loved my dispatch supervisor schedule. It was the exact days and the times I'd want. However, it completely jacks your body up. And I was tired all the time. Just because, you know, gosh, you'd have a day off and suddenly you want to be like a human and you want to sleep in and you want to, maybe heaven forbid, go to dinner, but my body's used to going to bed at 5 o'clock at night. So I can get up at midnight. You know, you just have, you kind of mess up your schedule. So being able to watch your fatigue and know when you have to say no and when you have to, I had to do a lot of sleep pattern training. Like I had to black out all my windows. I had to, like even over the curtains, I put like pool noodles and stuff in so I could have a blacked out room. I had to change the temperatures I would sleep. And I had to do things so that I could teach myself how to get to bed. Sadly, now I still am a little bit of the person that, you know, 7 o'clock comes around and I'm like, "Ooh, it's so late. What are we all doing awake?" But, you know, it takes a while to get there. Watching the interpersonal issues, you know, just watching stuff that's going on at home, whether it's friendships, relationships, kids, families, whatever. Interpersonal issues, I think one of my biggest stresses at work can be with some of the humans. That's definitely, I know in a management position has been a spot that I've really had to learn to not be judgmental or not be irritated with, you know, wanting to say, just do your freaking job and go home versus let's figure it out and let's use kind language and things like that, where, you know, it's been a learning curve for me, but, you know, some of those challenges and the frustrations, have been massive stresses for me that I've had to learn through. Workplace design and layout. What does anybody think this means? What kind of stress would workplace design and layout be? Brett.
I've some jobs I've had pretty harsh lighting that made my eyes tired after a while.
Okay. Yeah, so you can actually have a physical stress. It would be like poor chairs. That would be, you know, the way your monitors are set up. I think that's a big challenge for a lot of people coming into dispatch if they're not used to dealing with that many computers in a dark room. Gets a little weird, gets a little intimidating. Like I said, I had massive eye stress the first solid 6 months. Because A, part of it, I wasn't blinking. Part, you know, B, I'm not used to looking at all these computers, not used to the lighting. You know, things like that. You know, like I say, it's kind of unique. Again, I get cold all the time. So I had to figure out a way that I could organize to not be freezing, because that was a stress for me, because my, you know, hands would get sore and, you know, I would get like even more tensed up, things like that. But, you know, being able to look at stuff like, yeah, do I wear blue light glasses? Do I adjust my monitors in a way that they make more sense for me? A lot of dispatchers you'll find, you know, bring in, you know, like they purchased a keyboard that they really like, or, you know, a mouse, like the ergonomic one, or one that's more comfortable, things like that, different headsets. All of these types of things, you know, you may have to be stuck with what you've got. I can't come in and like, you know, feng shui out the whole workplace, but can I make my space that I'm going to be working in today more workable for me by, like I say, changing the lighting? And it's funny because everybody was here. Like I have a tendency to sit up and put all my monitors up. I remember one of the girls that was in my ground school class with me, like she would drop all of her monitors literally down to the desk, and she dropped the chair down. And I swear she had to be somehow in a recliner chair to even see these. It was uncomfortable to me. That's how she kept, that was what was most comfortable, and how she didn't get herself spooled up. So everybody's got a little different thing, and finding that space for you, you know, and that's why there is a lot that goes into, you know, different spaces and things like that. So, but this is definitely a new one that goes into this. So versus interpersonal issues, the personal issues, this is my own stuff, you know. Am I healthy? Am I having some health problems on my own? Am I having you know, stuff going on at home? Do I have the bill collectors calling me? Do I have some residual stuff going on? Like I say, just other stresses going on in my life that are more related to me and my home environment, things like that. IROPS. So IROPS, this is, you know, Aviation 101, every day's an IROP. So, or at least it feels like it. So any kind of irregular operation, for those of you new to aviation, this could be a weather event. This could be something major happening at a hub, like an emergency. You know, a few weeks ago, there was the plane that wrecked all the tires, you know, popped the tires when they landed from, when they came up from Latin America, and they came through that. That created an IROP because suddenly there was holding and diversions and all kinds of things. So something that's irregular, a lot of stress, because a lot of that happens really fast, especially if it's emergency things happening on. That revs your heart rate up really quickly. Again, that's cool that it can do. But if you've lived in, you know, what was it, 2-3 weeks ago when we had that horrific ice storms going through the South? That was like 4 days of IROPS through areas of ice storms that don't even have de-icing capabilities, that had, you know, horrific, one of the teams that we haul a little bit, the university was literally like just shut down, no power underwater and everything for a week. Like there was crazy stuff going on with flights from that. So that becomes a little bit of a challenge. Just that's part of the job, but you know, you do that days on ends, it'll catch up to you. Role ambiguity. What does this mean to anybody? Brian.
It means you're not exactly sure what you're supposed to be doing. Like either it hasn't been communicated well to you, or you have a crappy boss who doesn't really define what you're supposed to do. And it just puts you in an awkward, uncomfortable situation.
Yeah. And I feel sorry for my team every day with this because yes, I am a rotten boss. So there is that. But B, in my world, in my new or current position, dude, what this job was when they talked me into taking it was a totally 360, you know, completely opposite flip side of what it was 2 weeks later. And it's been at least 14 jobs since then in the last 5 months, and it keeps changing. And just when I'm like, we got systems, we're good, you know, oh, hey, now we're going to do it this way. And I get thrown another monkey wrench that I have to throw onto my team. You know, it's been a challenge, and I feel for me, I feel for them, because it is constant change at a very high level with, you know, what are we going to do next? And, you know, I'm trying to make plans for next season, next fall. And I'm talking to companies and contractors, and I'm actually, with all confidence, can say I have zero clue how this is going to play out next year. Zero. I know I'm not going to do it the same way I did this year, but I don't even know if we're selling the same thing next year. It's completely, that ambiguity is, I think that's one of my highest stresses right now, because A, I know I pass that on to other people, but B, I can't make plans. I can't even really organize what my own personal life is around that, because it is so ever changing. And just when I think we've solved one thing, like I say, I thought we were pretty locked down in what my department was doing. And just last week, we got thrown a total new monkey wrench. And the next thing I know, there's more software and there's more things. And I was having a meeting for this today, and I was asking questions, and every answer I asked was, well, we don't know yet. Well, we don't know yet. And I'm like, well, we got to know in a couple of weeks. And they're like, yeah, we'll figure it out. So yeah, that creates a little bit of stress, because then again, I have the stress that I'm chasing it, but I also have the stress knowing that I'm going to pass it on to somebody else. Okay, so you've got to work to mitigate the stresses. So knowing what your stresses are, being able to step back and actually admit that, dude, I'm at my wit's end and I've got to handle some things. You're going to have to go ahead and mitigate. You're going to have to do something to change the outcome. Have you guys ever heard that saying that, you know, doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome? is the actual definition of insanity. I think that's so true in so many ways in my life, in people that I observe, things like this, is that we know it's frustrating. It's kind of like take my health, right? Like if I'm constantly sick and I'm constantly going to the doctor and I'm, have some chronic problems going on that are in that preventable range, it is really hard to eat healthy, exercise, make wise choices on your food, not eat the sugar, cut back to caffeine, do all the things that everybody will tell you, go spend time in the sunshine, go and, eat. And we keep wanting to fix it without actually doing the effort to fix it. And I think this is really what mitigating stress is about, is being willing to do the things that don't seem convenient at the moment. Getting better sleep. I think for a lot of new dispatchers, especially you young punks. I was not a young punk, but looking for a social life, so I got lucky. But I think it's really common that, they still want to do all the fun stuff and go out with friends, but now they work at 3 a.m, or, they work very bizarre hours and now like late at night, but, they still don't go home and sleep well, things like that. Or heaven forbid, a bunch of them, I know in our folks, they'll work late and then they'll still go out. They, work it out that way. But like being able to prioritize sleep and not just the timing, but like set up an environment that you can actually get proper rest. And if you have to, I will say for me, I don't think everybody has to do this, but something that gives you biofeedback into your sleep, I think has been probably my single biggest game changer. Because it's like connected dots for me. Like, I will have a night that I think I had enough sleep and I'll look at my data and it'll be like, well, you kind of slept like crap. No wonder you're so tired. It connects those two dots. And then I can also look back and say, well, I did eat ice cream just before I went to bed. So I guess serves me right a little bit. So I can start connecting dots a little bit. So it's been a good thing for me. I know there's a lot of things people do to improve sleep. I think you could go down 3 days of rabbit holes with all of the biohacking that's out there and the improvement. I don't know how many of you do a lot of that stuff. Like I say, for me, just tracking it and doing some very basic things, like trying to wind down a little bit. I do use one of the things that's also been helpful for me that's, I guess, in that biohacking is I use nerve stimulators that help me spool down a little bit. So I call them my zappers. But I know that my nervous system has a tendency to go into hyperdrive. And so that's been something that's helped me. But it's been an absolute game changer, especially with a weird schedule, to really prioritize with that. Addressing issues as they come up. Another thing that I think is a game changer is to be able to have hard conversations. I was told once those are sweaty conversations, the ones you don't want to have, the ones that feel like they're high stakes, the ones that you don't want to have because you feel weak or you feel whatever reason, or you think somebody's going to think it's stupid, or all of the different things. Being able to address and manage issues as they come up and have the conversations, and to, take ownership of where you are and be able to take all of that stuff, I think really does a lot to manage stress, because again, it gets you out of rumination, which is just that spinning things over and over and over again. I guarantee you will all ruminate a flight at some point where, oh, I should have done this and I should have done that and I should have done this. Well, at some point you have to be able to say, I've learned from it, I'm moving on. So another common thing this is really hard for me. So I can, once I'm out of it and I'm in the cool of it and everything's gone and passed, I can say, you can't control the situation, but you can control your reaction. I'm pretty tightly spooled. I know when I am stressed, I'm more tightly wound. I am not great at controlling my reactions. I don't have a poker face. If it comes through my brain, there's a good chance it's going to come out my mouth. And so I've had to learn to take a deep breath before, like, it's still something I'm practicing, you know, don't get me wrong. I have to learn to, you know, put a governor on that. Also, taking that breath, it does drop your heart rate. It does bring you back down to something normal versus let me just fly off the handle and, you know, are you freaking kidding me? Which is usually my reaction to a lot of things. But, you know, being able to slow your body and your reaction down slightly, like I say, it's kind of the idea of getting back to, you know, being chased by the lion, you know, out on the safari, right? So I need to know that, oh, I've seen a lion. This is the time that I don't spool down. I have a good reaction. I run fast. But the minute I'm done being chased, being able to take that breath and just stop, that's kind of the ultimate human experience as far as stress relief. I'm telling you, I am not there. Will I ever get there? Probably not. But I have to do a lot of external work in order to manage that. Like, I am not a natural meditator, just so you know. Does not come easy for you. But I know when I do certain things to spool my brain down, I sleep better. I am less of a basket case the next day. I'm all of these different things. So, pop quiz. We're going to come back to that next. What would be some other things that you guys do to manage stress? Because we're talking about, like, sleep is a big one. Because I'm just telling you, that's a big one. I remember, I think it was a school administrator telling me that, like, when a kid's losing it, you know, you got to ask the first two things. You know, are you hungry and are you tired? You know, those are and, you know, are you safe? Like, those are your three big things you've got to look at. So I think as adults, you know, I can get a little crazy when I haven't eaten, things like that. But what are some of the things that help you guys process stress or prevent it from happening or reacting in a way that's not healthy? And don't make me play roulette.
Going outside to take a walk, if the weather, you know, just getting a walk and getting away from everything for a little bit, that helps.
Oh, absolutely. For me, whether it's outside or just walking away from my desk for a few minutes and doing a lap. Caitlin.
This would be like more so for on the days off, but when I'm stressed, I tend to self-isolate. So I find that if I make plans to hang out with friends, that helps a lot.
Okay. That's actually a really good one. That's a huge self-awareness there that, hey, when I'm stressed, I do this, and I need to do the opposite of that to break that cycle. That's excellent. I have a tendency to become a hermit myself. Sometimes going to the grocery store is just too much. Who else? What other things? Brett.
Sometimes if I don't have the luxury of like going and doing like de-stressing activities and I notice that I'm starting to feel stressed, I will take a personal inventory of what I think is stressing me out and be a little bit more cautious and aware of the fact that I'm probably not on my A game until I have time to fully kind of decompress.
Okay. Excellent. So that's like a huge self-awareness right there. You know, to slow down in that moment. Like I say, I usually react and regret, but I'm trying to practice. I'm getting better. You know, now that my job ends me in HR for doing that, I'm trying to get better. What else? Rebecca.
If I have a lot of things to do, I'll make a to-done list. So as I accomplish things, I like to check them off. It feels better than having a mountain of things to do.
Yeah, like being able to just articulate and organize the tasks at hand. I feel like that mountain of tasks, like what is the 5 things that if I get them done, I'll still be okay. Like even prioritizing that, I think is a good thing as well as, like I say, a lot of people do that. Feels good to check it off. Okay, I got somewhere. Sadly, some days I think my list grows faster than my checkoffs, but I do like to check something off. But I think prioritizing is something, the better you get at prioritizing, the less stress you have. Because you get that, what is that saying? It's something like, you know, 80% of your results are from 20% of your action. So how do you learn to get into doing the 20% actions most of the time. What else? I would say some of the, not just getting outside, but actually exercising. Getting out. I joked many times and said, Sky West, we need a rage room, you know, have one of those things where you get to throw things and break the old computers or something. But just outside, like physical exertion is one of the best ways to shut down a ruminating brain that is spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and keeping you awake at night. Like when you make your body exhausted, not just your mind exhausted, it helps you sleep. Now, obviously, you don't want to push through injury because that's a new set of stress, but just being able to move. For me, like, I feel like, especially with, like I say, working for so many years at 2 a.m., it got a little weird to find space for movement. I do feel like it's very common that aviation workers, a lot, as well as a lot of like shift workers in healthcare, things like that, do find themselves in some funky health, possibly of, you know, gained weight or, you know, not as active as they used to be, things like that. I think a lot of it is the weird schedule. Like I was always one, back in my younger years, I was a runner. And, you know, it was my thing. I had to, you know, get up and I was running at the crack of dawn. And then I was, you know, had my little rhythm and my routine. And then you have your snack and you go to work. And there was this whole thing. I do very well on a day-to-day with routine. I think a lot of people do. I'm one of those that, you know, I'm spontaneous and cut loose, and I'm the ones that shows up in another country and may or may not have a hotel or have any clue what I'm doing next. But on the day-to-day, I do much better with that routine, something that I do over and over and over again, because your brain, it does allow your brain to get rid of some stress because I'm kind of in a specific motion. For me to work at 2 a.m., I'm going to be honest, I didn't enjoy running at midnight. I didn't enjoy in the summer here in St. George going at noon when I got off. It was too hot. And then by the time it cooled down, like it's even weird for me to, when I was dispatching to walk my dog, because like during the daytime, it was too hot for her little paws. But then like I'd have to do something weird in the middle of the night. So it kind of like is weird to find a rhythm for stuff like that. I also think one of the hardest things to manage is food choices. I feel like having your body under duress from having your blood sugar screwed up because you live on caffeine and sugar and junk food. And I'm here to tell you that that's often what's available. That's, I mean, like I say, I know where I work, there's a pretty good little snack shack, but it's all junk food. Like there's not a lot of fundamentally healthy stuff in there. Addiction to caffeine became a massive thing because again, like I'd have to spool it up because I'd walk into work a little before 2 a.m. and it was go time. It wasn't, let's ramp into this. Let's find my rhythm. It was like, you know, no, my desk was fired up by the time I got in there and a little heavy on the morning. So, which I liked, but at the same time, it just changes stuff. I find that the people who work in the evenings will say that they get really weird sleep stuff. And oftentimes they will go to bed and, you know, it's too late to do something when they get home at 2 in the morning or something, but they end up like doom scrolling or watching a movie or something. And then they end up sleeping until they go back to work at 4 the next night or whatever it is. So I think both, whether it's early morning or night, you end up with some really weird stuff that make eating well and like I say, 10-hour shifts. Like if you didn't plan ahead and pack your lunch and get yourself organized, it's really challenging to maintain any type of, you know, healthy lifestyle. It's not impossible. So don't get me wrong there, but it is extra effort. And I believe that the people that do take that extra effort do manage the stress a little bit better. So it is definitely some other things to do. Like whatever you do, like have some times that you do something that has nothing to do with aviation. Now, I'm going to admit there's some people I think that nerd out on aviation. Like it's super interesting to me, but it's not how I spool down. Like find the things that help you spool down. Like Is it reading a book? Is it, you know, like I say, is it, I found times that I just have to go wander in a shop or something, just like I have to think about nothing. I find myself wanting to solve other people's problems because they seem so much easier than my own. But just different ways to, you know, like I say, like Caitlin said, you know, if you find yourself when you're stressed, self-isolating, getting out there and doing something, trying new things is surprisingly a good stress, especially if it's low stakes. You know, I guess if you're in, I haven't succumbed to it yet because I was a tennis player in my days, but pickleball, I guess, you know, trying something new or weird or something different. I've got a friend who's got a pretty stressful job, and it's really interesting. She told me, like, she takes one of those community education classes. Like, she's like, oh yeah, this term I'm taking pottery. You know, it'll be something totally random. Like, she took like a crochet class or something. She's like, I don't even like doing it, but I wanted to learn something, and she just needed to focus her brain on something that was nothing to do with what her regular work was. So I think all of these are very valid things in controlling stress. So, and like I say, we kind of beat this up a little bit, even though it seems like common sense, but I'm here to tell you, stress is going to impact you in this job. It's going to, you know, it's going to impact your physical health because of physical stressors. Like I say, you're going to be sitting in a chair, your back's going to hurt. You're going to be staring at the screen, needing the eye drops. You're going to have the actual physical stresses, you know, like my neck hurt from not having my screens right. You know, I feel like my posture's changed since I've been sitting on computers, and not for a good way. But then, like I say, the mental stress of that first year of, you know, dispatching. And then, like I say, I kind of blame myself, but like I finally got feeling good about dispatching, and I went into system controlling, and I finally felt comfortable with that. And then I moved into something else. There's just always this constant learning, which does help. But at the same time, sometimes your brain needs a change. It needs to switch gears a little bit versus just go, 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 go. Okay. So we're going to wrap up. We got some more stuff. We'll finish tomorrow, obviously, but let's do a pop quiz. Do we require an alternate on the 11th at 5:30 Zulu? The 11th at 5:30 Zulu. Go ahead and put in the chat what you think once you have it. Do we require an alternate on the 11th at 5:30 Zulu? Heck yeah. You guys did great. Which lines are you in there? On the 11th? Aha, we got some people. There we go. Everybody. So, oh, this doesn't let me. Oh, man. So, yeah, you're down here, right? Because this line is going to go from this 1800 clear up till the 11th at 6, right? Okay, because this is when this ends, but we're going to go here. We have a tempo line going from 21Z on the 10th until 1Z on the 11th. Okay, so here's our line. I'm going to go back to my main body here. But still, even if I was in this two lines, I wouldn't have an alternate. The 10th at 15:30. Okay, I'm going to need an alternate here because of broken 1500, right? I got a tempo line that changes stuff here, but later in the day, we're just fine. 20,000, 6 statute miles. Cool. Everybody with that? Any questions? Let's use this last 10 minutes. Any questions that you have from anything that's going on? Because then we'll pick up this rest of this stuff tomorrow on this human factors and all the different things. Has everybody decided that you need to start healthy habits before you get your dispatch job? Let's do it. Don't do like the rest of us do in the industry. Because then you have to get them back. Question, Brian.
Just talking about this, the work environment and stuff, it kind of made me think. I was wondering how many monitors do you typically have as a dispatcher? Just curious.
It's SkyWest. At SkyWest, we use 4. Assistant controllers will take 5. When I was a dispatch supervisor, we originally had 4. I did peer pressure people into 5 for that. We hijacked one and everybody said, I said, let's just try it. And I was told dock it to attach to it, but then everybody liked it. We do have 3 stations. I think 3 stations in the room that have just 3 monitors, but they're bigger. We've got a few people with like, eye issues. So with that, yeah, there's a few people that's like a preference. So they just need bigger. So they have, I guess, less real estate that they can put different things on. More that they can see everything's a little bigger for them. So, but that's kind of the typical for SkyWest. So I'm one that likes real estate. I use 3 now in my current role, which if they gave me 5 or 6, I'd take them. But my laptop only supports 3, so I run with 3. But yeah, you'll find that one of the things that will help alleviate some stress is to become a little bit of a creature of habit. Takes a little bit of time to figure out what your desk setup is, but you kind of train your head that if I'm looking for this information, I always look this way or always look this way or whatever the direction is. And so I had different setups. I had a dispatcher set up. For a while, we had a remote capability that we could work remote 1 day a week. As a dispatcher, we don't do that any longer, but I had actually a different remote setup because I had different screen configuration. I had a very distinct system control setup, a very distinct dispatch supervisor setup. I've kind of learned what I like in my current role, and I've kind of worked that out for 3 screens. I just have more stuff hidden. But like I even created like Google Chrome and Google Edge accounts so that all of my tabs that I like open, I can open them automatically. And I'm like, all of my pages are in the same order. So I just know where my next tab is. So I feel like that is something that helps people. And it may be slightly different setups for different roles that you have, or, like I say, however it works out, but finding what works for you. And it'll be different for everybody. It's not, I don't think it's specific by any means, but having that kind of rhythm when you get in as to this is what I open, this is what I do next, this is where all of my tools are. I think that was a huge stress reliever for me up front when I finally figured out what worked for me. And it took me a minute, to be honest, because I had a few of my trainers were very connected to the way they did it. And the coolest thing about that was, the fact that I got to see a lot of different ways. And by the end, I knew what I didn't like. And so I just had to figure out what I did like. The drawback to that was I'd have to come in every time I had a new trainer and be like, okay, well, what is, how do you want this done? And it was always, well, I want it done the right way. Well, it's like, okay, your right way and George's right way and Martha's right way are all different things. But I was able to see a lot of things. So I was grateful for that. But finding your rhythm, and I feel like I finally found my desk setup. You know, after the first few weeks of being on my own, I was still tweaking little things, but for the most part, I kind of found something. Some people are lucky and they find something they like right away. So just kind of depends, but becoming a creature of habit and just doing the same steps. So I would, you know, open everything up. Like I'm kind of paying attention. Doing my weather brief was pretty quick on the, like our enhanced weather product that we use. And I kind of just did a lap around the map for that. And then like in the summer, I had a couple of extra tools that I opened. In the winter, I'd have some that they were in my tabs, but I didn't really go study them. I just knew where they were to go get specific information. But then I would kind of mark up my desk with the software that we use, and I would kind of make myself little notes. So I would always like do a cruise through my desk, like, you know, 50 flights, I would be kind of catching, and I would mark stuff that I wanted to pay attention to. So I had a little rhythm, and I could do all of that and get everything locked. It was all done within 15 minutes, like logging in, organizing, marking everything. And then I was jumping onto my flights. But anytime I messed that up, I had a tendency to make more mistakes or just feel frazzled through the day. So, like I say, creatures of habit will, again, because it's not that frantic, where is that? Or I don't even know where to look for that, or I don't know what's next. And becoming, you know, good searchers of information, I think, is a very helpful tool as well. I also religiously hose everything down with disinfectant when I get to work. Because clearly I'm getting a cold just from being around people that are sick, but I don't want to be touching everybody's sicky stuff. So you're still going to catch it just through the vents, but you will prevent it from not touching it everywhere. So humans, we're kind of heathens. Other questions? I will even tell you, like, that become a, you know, creature of habit a little bit, even when you're doing this class and you start doing the flight plans. One of the best things you can do that'll help you get through the flight plans is after that the first one we do in person on Monday, Tuesday, find yourself a little rhythm as to how you gather information. It is a game changer for being able to remember what's next. One of the tools that we'll show you how to use is, you know, it's like a little route builder, so you can find your top of climb and top of descent, and it's like a little grid that goes across like this. One of the things I did, and I don't even remember who, you know, actually I do know, because we give you like a little one with all the math on it that you can practice with. We didn't have that available when I was in the school. And so that was a habit that we were kind of given, is like take a blank paper, and I would like draw that little thing, because you don't get to take the one with the instructions into your day exam anyway, but you can take blank paper. And I would, you know, here's all of my departure, here's all my destination information, and I just knew what information I had to kind of put on my scratch paper there. And that was just like, that helped me, was my trigger for me to remember what step was next and next and next. So finding a rhythm, once you figure out like the math and things like that, like finding the rhythm of what's next on the flight plans will be a game changer for you in class as well. Like I say, become a creature of habit. Any other questions, comments, concerns? We'll go through some more human factors. We'll get in tomorrow night into resource management, some basic applied dispatching, what if type questions, things like that. You come up with any, that'll be a good thing for tomorrow. Come up with some good, what would you do under this, or what would you do with that? You know, I'm sure you've had some that have popped up through the class. So bring your what ifs tomorrow. We love those. But if nothing else, we'll go ahead and stop the recording.